Welcome to today's episode of The Global Student, where we talk about studying abroad and what it's like to live and learn in a new country. I'm your host, and today we'll be talking about studying in the United States. We're excited to have two special guests with us, Bob and Alice, who both studied in the U.S. Hi, Bob and Alice.
Hi. Thanks for having us.
Hello. It's great to be here.
Before we get into the topic, could you each introduce yourselves? Let's start with you, Bob.
Sure. My name is Bob, and I'm from Vietnam. I studied in the U.S. for 4 years, where I got my bachelor's degree in computer science. I've always been interested in technology, and studying in the U.S. gave me the chance to learn from some of the best professors and meet students from all over the world. Now, I work as a software developer.
That's amazing, Bob. And how about you, Alice?
Hi, everyone. I'm Alice, and I'm from Brazil. I went to the U.S. to study marketing, and I stayed there for 2 years to get my master's degree. I love traveling and learning about new cultures, so studying in the U.S. was a big dream of mine. After I graduated, I worked in New York for a while before coming back to Brazil, where I now work in digital marketing.
It's great to hear about your backgrounds. Both of you have such interesting stories. So let's dive in. Bob, why did you choose to study in the U.S.?
Well, I knew that the U.S. had a strong reputation for technology and innovation. I wanted to be in a place where I could learn from the best and have access to the latest technology. Also, I wanted to improve my English, and studying in an English-speaking country seemed like the best way to do that.
That makes sense. Alice, what was your reason for studying in the U.S.?
For me, it was the opportunity to study in an international environment. I love learning about different cultures, and the U.S. is such a diverse place. I knew that I would meet people from all over the world, which would help me grow personally and professionally. Also, I wanted to experience life in a big city like New York.
That's a great point. The U.S. is very diverse, and it's an exciting place to study. Let's talk a bit about the application process. Was it difficult to apply to universities in the U.S.?
Yes, it was. I had to take the TOEFL exam to prove my English skills, and I also had to write a personal statement about why I wanted to study in the U.S. It was a long process, but I got a lot of support from my teachers and friends back home. In the end, I got accepted to a university in California.
It was the same for me. I had to take the GRE for graduate school, which was hard because it tested both English and math. I also had to show that I could pay for my studies, which was stressful. But I was determined to go, so I worked hard to prepare.
It sounds like the process took a lot of effort, but it was worth it in the end. Now, studying abroad can be expensive. How did you both manage the costs?
I was lucky to receive a scholarship from my university. It covered most of my tuition, but I still had to pay for living expenses, so I had to be careful with my money. I learned how to budget and save wherever I could.
I didn't have a scholarship, but I worked part-time on campus. In the U.S., international students can usually work up to 20 hours a week, and I found a job in the university library. It wasn't a lot of money, but it helped with my rent and food. My family also helped me, and I saved up before I went.
Working part-time is a great way to manage costs while studying abroad. Let's talk about what happened when you first arrived in the U.S. Was it a big adjustment?
Yes, it was. I had never been to the U.S. before, so everything was new to me. The first thing I noticed was how big everything was, especially the roads, the cars, and the stores. It took me a while to get used to it. And the language was another challenge. Even though I had studied English, it was still hard to understand when people spoke quickly or used slang.
I agree. The language was hard at first, but after a few months, I got more comfortable. For me, the biggest challenge was being far from my family. I felt homesick sometimes, especially during holidays. But I made friends with other international students, and that helped a lot.
Homesickness is definitely something many international students face. How did you both stay in touch with your families?
I used video calls a lot. Talking to my family every week made me feel closer to home. I also sent them pictures of my life in the US, so they could see what I was doing.
I did the same. I also sent messages every day to my family and friends back home. It's important to stay connected, especially when you're feeling lonely.
That's great advice. It's important to keep in touch with loved ones. Now, let's talk about the cultural differences. Did you experience any culture shock?
Yes, definitely. For example, people in the US are very direct when they speak. Back home, we're more polite and indirect, so that was a big difference for me. Also, the way people greet each other was different. In Vietnam, we don't usually hug or shake hands as much as Americans do.
I experienced culture shock too, especially with food and tipping in restaurants. In Brazil, tipping is not a big thing, but in the US, it's expected. It took me a while to get used to that. Also, I was surprised by how independent American students are. They work, study, and live on their own from a young age, which was different from my experience.
Those are really interesting observations. It sounds like you both learned a lot from the cultural differences. What was the best part of studying in the US for you?
For me, it was the academic environment. The classes were really interactive, and the professors encouraged us to ask questions and share our opinions. I also enjoyed working on group projects with students from different countries. It helped me see things from different perspectives.
I loved the travel opportunities. I visited several cities and states during my time in the US, including New York, Washington, D.C., and California. Each place had its own unique culture and vibe, so I felt like I was always learning something new, even outside of the classroom.
It sounds like you both had amazing experiences, both academically and personally. What advice would you give to students who are thinking about studying in the US?
My advice would be to plan ahead. The application process takes time, so start early and make sure you have everything ready. Also, don't be afraid to ask for help, whether it's from teachers, friends, or even the university itself. There are always people who can guide you through the process.
I would say, be open to new experiences. Studying abroad is a big change, and things might be different from what you're used to, but that's part of the adventure. Be flexible and take the time to learn from the people and places around you.
That's excellent advice from both of you. Thank you so much, Bob and Alice, for sharing your experiences with us today. It's been really insightful to hear about your journeys in the US.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you. It's been great to talk about our experiences.
And thank you to all our listeners. If you're considering studying abroad in the US, we hope this episode has given you some helpful tips and inspiration. Until next time, this is The Global Student. If you like this podcast, please consider subscribing. And if you have any feedback, please let us know. Goodbye.